And welcome to Believe in Chargers with the great Lorenzo Neal. Matt Money Smith here. It is a post-draft installment of Believe in Chargers. A lot of excitement. 8 new draftees and a handful of undrafted free agents added to the squad low. We're brought to you by FanDuel. A big thank you to them. Hey, we mentioned it, man, before the draft. We looked at it, and we liked the way that I think it was plus 800 on Akheem Mesidor. Low, you called it. We went through a couple, right? We went through a couple mock draft options, and I gave you multiple. And what did you say? Give me Mesidor.
Give him to me. And that's the thing, Money. They were coming at us. They were coming at our throat. They was all over. Oh, well, we got to get an offensive line. And me and you, Money, we stood our ground. They're like, you guys don't. You said, hey, Mess. I said, this is what they have to do. You got to get a pass rusher. You're getting old. You got Khalil. You had to beef up that interior line. He can fly side down and play inside with you if like. Told you Jason Taylor has those young men coming off the edge. They are game ready, NFL ready. I love the pick. I was so excited, Money. You and I nailed it, baby. That's why we're the salt and pepper team. Get some.
There we go. I'm the pepper, you're the salt, right? That's what this is. I had a chance to spend some time with Akheem on Saturday, and Lo, the old saying, right? Who's the first guy off the bus? Akheem can be the first guy off the bus. He's really put together, man. He's a good-looking player and just incredibly thoughtful, great answers to all the questions, very polished. And look, sometimes, young men are coming out of college and they're 20 or 21 years old. He's certainly been around the block a few times. He just turned 25. But I think that spills over onto the field, right? There's a maturity and a comfort level that you have when you're around fans and when you're on the stage and when you're asked to kind of, say the right things at the right times. And you certainly ace that test. I think that also applies to the field. You've just seen a lot more. You've lived a lot more. And for a team that has their sights set on the Super Bowl, having a guy you feel like you can drop right in there and you're not going to miss a beat, I think goes a long way.
It really does, Money. Just to speak to that, you brought a guy in, like you said, everyone's like, oh, well, he's 25. He's game ready. He understood when he was going against those college guys, he thought, hey, these guys can't block me. They're too young. He believes that he was one of the best players on that field, and it showed up, and he was. And now you're saying, okay, now make this transition to the NFL. He's going to look in that locker room and say, I'm just as old as half the guys on this team. I'm a third or fourth year player in the league. I could be a third year. So he's going to go in with high expectations. And just like the Chargers, that's why they drafted him with that 22nd pick overall. They have very high expectations for Mesidor to come in there and play at a high level. And I think he will. And you look at what his pedigree, and this guy's been around. You talked about he's a guy that can get off the bus, be one of the first guys. Why? Because he's mature. His body's mature. This guy has a great trajectory because he's in the part of your body where you're strong at 25, 26, 27, 28. He's in those great years right now.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm pulling it up, and I'm so terrible about this, so I apologize to everybody that's watching it, and I'm drifting with my eyes, but I was going through the Chargers draft class, and like the thing about the 25-year-old is it's so important to remember that, and I'm going to pull up their thing now because I want to say of their 8 draftees, I'm almost positive, I'm not entirely, you know what, let me just kind of pull it so I can just make sure. Let's see, what do we got here? Where is Logan Taylor? Logan is 24 and 2 months. Like a lot of these guys are 25. A lot of these guys are 24. For people that are like, oh, yeah, Akheem Mesidor, of course he looked good. He's beating up on kids. He's not beating up on kids. So many. Right now, we are right at the end of the COVID class. So after this year, you're going to have a bit of a reset, and finding 25-year-olds is going to be much less common. This was the final draft class where there's a lot of 23, and if you look, I get it. There's a gap between 19 and 25. You're going to get a lot more man strength in those 6 years. He ain't playing against 19-year-olds. You ain't, that Indiana team, was chock full of 22, 23, and 24-year-olds that they went against in the national championship. No different with Oregon. No different with, the ACC. I just mentioned he went up against Logan Taylor at BC in the ACC. That guy's 24 and 2 months. Alex Harkey, Nick Barrett, who they drafted in the 5th, is 23 years old. Like, these guys are older. So 25 in 2026 is not 25 in 2015. It is a way different conversation because of just how weird with transfer and a guy that missed a full season. So he's got a COVID year, he's got a missed year with those 2 foot injuries, and here we are. He's 20. He just turned 25, and he is ready to roll.
He's ready to roll, and people got to be like, hey, you should be excited that you got a guy that's a boy dog that's going to come in and help you right away. You needed an impact player. When Cleo goes out, or if they on the field together, NASCAR, whatever they like to call it, and now you have a guy that could actually get out there and really perform at a high level. I don't think this guy's going to take a lot of time to get going. I'm telling you, you know how great Jason Taylor was. You know what this guy brought to the game.
Yeah.
Here's a guy that's going to come into the league. Is he going to get better? Absolutely. Can he learn more? Absolutely. But I don't know if you can sit here and say, without a shadow of a doubt, I think it'd be hard for you or I to be pressed to say he's going to have a better technician to teach him how to pass rush better than the coach that he had.
Yeah, look, that's the one thing about, and you know what, I'll say this, and then I want to put a pin in it, and we'll come back to it because we did have big breaking news yesterday that I think we should probably get to sooner than later. It's what the people want to hear because it's something that we've been sort of saying, yeah, I can see this happening. So I'll end with it, in talking to Akheem on Saturday and spending some time with him about Jason Taylor and all of that and sort of what he meant. And it's clear that coach had a very significant impact on him. Well, now you're coming to Dylan Roney and Mike Elston and Jim Harbaugh and Chris O'Leary, not to mention Khalil Mack. I'm sure, the video that the Chargers were circulating of him meeting Khalil and how warm that embrace was from Khalil, and whatever you need, I'm here. Come on back out after you get your tour done or something. We'll start chatting right away. Like this is someone who clearly took a jump, took a big step because of his coaching, because of the belief that Jason Taylor, and I'll tell you, it's very similar. His answer with Jason Taylor, why he took that big jump, I thought is very similar to what we heard about Jesse Minter. And that is that he made it very simple. Everything was sort of very simple of what he expected, of what he wanted. And what did we always hear from Jesse, right? He's like, I can still remember. It's one of my favorite quotes I've ever heard Jesse, a coach, say when Coach Minter said, he was asked kind of about how he teaches his scheme and how he coaches his players up. And he said, there's a point in coaching where you know a lot more and you have a lot more information than your players do. And that's great that I know that, but I don't need them to know that I know that because that's just going to confuse them. I just need them to know what I need them to know. And the point, I think, illustrated that too many coaches want to kind of show off and confuse players to think like, well, I really got to listen to Coach, man, because he certainly knows a lot more. That doesn't work. Simple is effective. And I'm very excited to see what Akheem can do with this group. But like I said, Lo, put a pin in that.
Let's do it.
Because you had a chance to spend some time with him. I've spent 3 years with him. Very excited for Quentin Johnston. They pick up his 5th-year option. A lot of speculation on whether or not that was going to happen. $18 million. A lot of people thought it was absolutely not going to happen. We've been talking about it for a while now. The way these free agent contracts are lining up for wide receivers, the belief that this front office and this coaching staff seem to have in him made it not just likely, but pretty likely that this is what the end result was going to be. And now Q is under contract for 2027 for $18 million.
Yeah, I'm happy for the young fella. I know you are too. And like I told you, Money, you went a long way. Saw him at the tournament last year. Andre Reed's one of the Hall of Fame receivers. And I said, Money believes in you. Take over. And it's interesting because the kid did have a good year. And of course, tongue in cheek, but the guy has worked. He's struggled. He's worked. He's perfected. He's gotten a lot better. The guy run after catch, the yak yards, what he's able to do in the passing game for this Charger team. Quentin has put in the time. He's had a lot of boos and had a lot of naysayers, but he's overcome. And it's great that this Charger organization said, you know what? We're going to give him his $18 million. Is a little rich? Could be. And you still go out and you draft a receiver in the 4th round. So it gives him at least that, hey, look, they want me. They believe in me. And I think you're going to see this guy even improve even more next year because of the commitment the Chargers have shown him.
Yeah, Lo, just keep going with it because I think you can shed some insight and some light on it. having been around a number of young players throughout your career, being sort of that veteran presence, there are not a lot of players that went through what Q went through his rookie year. It was not just a Chargers fan base. He became a national punchline for a lot of these sites that pick apart mistakes by athletes, and Q became the face of dropping passes. It became, anytime there was a big drop in a national game, in a nationally televised game, there was a Q meme. And that's what that guy had to deal with his rookie year, his first year in the league, 21 years old, and that's what that dude has to deal with. So your experience with young players that deal with not just a little, but a lot of adversity, and how hard it is for them to dig out of that.
I tell you, a lot of them don't overcome it. I mean, a lot of them just become guys. A lot of them, you just say, hey, look, you see them fall off. I remember, drafting a guy, Reggie. Reggie, insane Reggie, played at Florida, played with me with the Saints when I came in '93, outside backer, and this guy's drafted high and think he's supposed to be this unbelievable pass rusher and didn't have it. And you saw his confidence start to weather. Guys try to give him the, confidence booster, moving him up. Let's go. And you see it a lot with a lot of these first round guys that just turns out to be bust. And Q looked like that was the trajectory. Talented, fast, could run, all the athletic abilities that you want, and you just see that this lack of concentration when the ball would get there, everything would be great until the ball got there. Once the ball showed up, he was dropping. You can't run without the ball. And you saw this guy every year just continue to grind and make himself into a serviceable, not great, but good receiver. And the thing that's great about this is they gave him $18 million. But Q can improve even more. He can even become better pass catcher because you still see some drops, but he's the big explosion plays. He runs hard, the yak yards. Q has really, really showed up and showed not just himself, but the fan base that, hey, look, I got thick skin. I hear what you're saying. He could have easily went to a shell money, and you've seen it. We've seen it. And guys just like become a shell himself, and now they just get the ips, the drops, and you see them. They're just, before you know it, they're out on the streets. Now they're in that circuit. A team picks them up for a couple weeks and let them go. This Charger team, though, kudos to this organization, because they could have moved and said, hey, that's a number. We're not going to stay. We're going to show you that we're committed. So kudos to the organization to show this young man, we believe in you. We see what you've done, and we see where you're going. And the trajectory says nothing but positive things. So that's a great sign for Q.
Yeah, his rookie season, 38 catches on 67 targets, 430 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a change of coaches, a change in the front office, and Joe Ortiz. And there's a few reasons why I felt like we were, I believe, in the minority of, I think they can pick this up. I think we can draw a map to where the final destination is. 50-year option gets picked up for Q. And the first piece was 2 years ago when Joe Ortiz showed up, and he's in a front office where they get the very next pick and end up taking the guy that a lot of Charger fans wanted in Zay Flowers. And he ends up going on to be a Pro Bowl receiver, and that compounded the issues for Q, is that Zay and Jordan Addison and Dalton Kincaid and the players that were being talked about in that selection spot that they didn't take went on to have big rookie seasons. And it would have been very easy for Joe Ortiz to come in here and not own him and just distance himself and say, hey, you know what? It's a clean slate for Q. Let's see if we can get him, with our coaches and what becomes. And that's not what happened. Joe Ortiz came in and said, hey, look, if they would have taken Zay, Q was the next guy on our board. We believe in Quentin. I loved my evaluation of Quentin. I think he can be a really good receiver. Same thing with Coach Harbaugh. I love this kid. I already had a meeting with him. I think the future's bright. You saw what he did to me in the semifinal out at SoFi Stadium. I got put it on us, something sideways in that college semifinal that they ended up knocking Michigan out when Harbaugh was the coach. Those guys took ownership of Quentin. They did not. And look, man, look what you see in Buffalo with what those guys are doing to Keon Coleman, and just trying to distance themselves from a young man that's going through some struggles. And This front office and head coach did the exact opposite. And once you do that, man, you own them.
Yeah,
And you can't distance yourself from them anymore. You draft a wide receiver in a first round the very next year, like Malik Neighbors instead of Joe Alt. Well, now you've distanced yourself from Q. But that is not
absolutely.
what this team. That's not what this team did, Lo.
No, it's not. And just to add to that, you think about if you have a girl and you think she doesn't want to hold your hand, you go walk down the street and she's like, I don't want to hold your hand. You reach there and her hand's not there. Or you in the movies and you're not trying to sit next to her. She's leaning over a little away from you, like, wow, don't really want to share you. I'll get my own popcorn. There's a problem now. So we got a problem. Guess what? You're going to the bathroom, you're checking your nose, making sure you smell good. And I'm telling you, that happens to receiver. That happens in this game. Exactly, distance yourself, not really connected, or the team's starting to And guess what? Your performance go down. Now when you're trying to communicate with the person that you love, because you feel some friction, because she's distant, your communication, it's not there. You're thinking about other things. And that's what could happen to Q. But what Harbaugh, and like you said, this administration did, they embraced him. And look what this guy did. I heard Lou Holtz tell a story once. We were playing in the Senior Bowl, and Lou Holtz was the coach, and he rips the newspaper up. You know how he does those magic tricks. It was pretty amazing. And he tells a story about his kid, and he kept pushing his kid really hard. And his kid went home and kept telling his mom, oh, man, coach is pushing me too hard. Lou said he drove him up to the mountain the next day. Lou tips him in the car. He says he took him to the mountain, brought him to the edge of the cliff, and he pushed him and he flew. And it was like, whoa, did you really push the guy? And he flew. You're like, no. But he was telling the story how you have to push people and make them uncomfortable. Yeah. And that story stuck with me. And that's what you've seen with Q. They embraced him, but they pushed him. And Q flew.
Yeah. And I think you could have, I think Mike McDaniel, look, picking up the fifth-year option, you know what that is? That's Mike McDaniel putting his stamp of approval on him. If McDaniel says, it's $18 million that they're going to guarantee, that this guy is now guaranteed. He is guaranteed $18 million for 2027. You can't cut him. That money is on the books. Q is on the books. Now you can trade him. Somebody else can take on that $18 million. But as it looks right now, that is now Mike McDaniel taking ownership. Because I can guarantee you, if Mike said, hey, man, I really like Trey Harris, I love Ladd McConkey, get me this. And we know we're going to get into Brennan Thompson and how badly Mike McDaniel wanted Brennan Thompson. You very easily could have had McDaniel distance himself from Q as well and say, yeah, we're good without. Like, up to you guys. I'm good either way. $18 million, kind of your call. Instead, I'm sure McDaniel said, oh, no, I can do good things with Q, man.
And you heard LT. We had the great LT on the show, and he talked about Trey Harris. He said, I think Trey Harris is going to be a player. This is the great LaDainian Tomlinson. Say, hey, look, Trey's going to be a player. And, so you're absolutely right. Mike McDaniels could have said, hey, I got Trey. I got these other guys. I could distance myself, but he didn't.
Yeah, and I think also you draft Brennan Thompson. And look, Brennan, like I said, we're going to get into him, but there's not a lot. There are some, and the number one player that comes to mind is Deshaun Jackson, who became an All-Pro. But there are not a lot of slight-built receivers that are lightning quick that have experienced incredible success. There's some that have experienced some success, but not a lot that have experienced high-level Pro Bowl kind of level success. And the fact that Brennan Thompson's coming in at 5'9", 165 pounds, you can't put that guy out there for a ton of snaps. That's just you can't survive in the NFL. I know he came from the SEC and he busted his tail and he busted up some cornerbacks and safeties and linebackers and led the conference in receiving yards. And I think he's going to have a sensational NFL career. But I also think that needs to be managed. And I think when you have a horse like Q, who's 6'2.5", 210 pounds, that's someone you can throw out there every single snap and throw him a ton of targets and throw him underneath routes where he's getting that yak and you're going to get hit by a corner and a safety or a linebacker and a corner. You can pop right back up and you can weather it. He missed a single game last year, but I do think there is something to the build of a receiver, the availability of a receiver, and if you like the matchup, not feeling uncomfortable going to him for 12, 13 targets in a game, knowing he's going to get hit. Just on those receptions alone that many times, not to mention all the times you're asking him to engage and block, and I think his run blocking has gotten a lot better. But so that's those are the first two things that popped out to me. One, George Tease and Harbaugh's stamp of approval when they could have distanced themselves. Two, Mike McDaniel comes in as a new OC. We're talking about, I could see him using Q the way he really should be used, in that yak, short, quick hitter, create space, let him go sort of opportunities instead of making him just the X and sending him on these 9 routes.
Yeah, I totally agree that they use Q. They use him on the slants. They use Q on the bubble screens. Q is used on a plethora amount of routes. And the big guy, like you said, you see him take some big shots at times. Goes in there and he has to run in there with the wheat with the trees and get hit by linebackers and everything. And I was shocked that you look at in the 4th round they get Ben Thompson, wide receiver to Mississippi State. You say, okay, this Charger team. After they went that defense, you saw it. It was a huge switch. It was offense, guards, tackles, centers. And it showed that, hey, look, we got to get an impact player for defense to make sure we can put pressure on the quarterback and keep the main thing. But we're going to get this offense rolling. And I'm excited to see, Thompson, receiver. How is he going? Is this guy going to play? How do you put him in? Do you put this guy in a slot? Is he going to be kind of like what Kansas City got in, with the young guy that they have that can streak, can fly, ran fastest time in the 40? Is that going to be his type of game? How do you see, Thompson, in this Chargers offense?
Yeah, I think he's different than Worthy. Worthy, we saw it early, and and it happens a little bit to Thompson as well, but Thompson's got some real sort of wiggle, and he's got some double moves, and he's got some shake, and he can dust some of these corners. I felt like Worthy is kind of more of that. You better not let him get off, because if he does, you can't catch him. Whereas I feel like Thompson's got a little bit more. I'm not saying he's a precise route runner, but I think he's got a lot more refinement to his route running than Xavier Worthy had. And I think we've seen Worthy be ineffective, and be ineffective when you can get your hands on him. And there is some of that to Thompson, but I feel like it's not as much. I also feel like this guy, when he finds space, and he can whip out of space in a hurry, he gets to top speed like that, man. Like it's not just the 4.26, it's the acceleration to get there. It's that he hit over 24 miles an hour at the combine while running that 4.26. And so I do think when you pair that with Mike McDaniel, and what he is, what's Mike McDaniel best at? Creating space. He's a sage. I mean, he's a wizard when it comes to that particular part of offense. How do I create an opening for my players? And then it's up to them. Hey, here's the play. And the play is going to get us this. This play is going to get us 4.5 yards. What can you turn it into? Because I'm going to give you a little bubble to work with. And let's see what you can turn 4.5 yards into. And with all that speed that he had on Miami, whether it was Mostert or Ichan or Waddle or Hill, that's the secret sauce of speed. It's not just that these guys are fast. It's having someone that can draw up plays to put them into a position where guys can't get. Because typically if you have speed, what is it? You're smaller. Because you got all that speed. You ain't carrying a lot of weight. So how do I put this blazing fast speed in a position where they can't get their hands on him? And he's got an opportunity to turn 4.5 into 9, or 4.5 into 14.5, or 4.5, like Brennan Thompson. I think of all, what did he have? I think he had 5 touchdowns of 40 yards or more. And he could have had more because his quarterback wasn't great. And there were some missed opportunities in there. So that's kind of what we're talking about with Thompson. And that kind of speed is McDaniel can draw up open space, man, like a mother scratcher. And
he can. And we got to see that when you up close and personal when you talk about San Francisco, when the days when their offense was humming. You saw the way that he did with Kittle. And that's what I love about this opportunity that this Chargers organization is going to have, especially with the tight end room, that what you have and the receivers and the running back that you have in Amari and Hampton, and all this misdirection, how you're going to spread guys out in the mismatch. You're going to have this offense. I tell you, I know we talked about it last year. You're like, man, if they can just get to 24, and of course the line, disappointing with the line play because too many injuries, but you're going to have so much more misdirection. And like you're talking about, so much different schemes. And now you got a guy running a 4.26, and you got Q at 4.3, and you got your other receivers that just can fly. This team is going to be a lot of fun to watch this coming season, because you have so many weapons, but you have weapons that's going to stretch the field, that's going to create so many opportunities for the underneath stuff for the running game. Now the safeties can't come and put 8 guys in the box. You're going to have to stay back in too high, because you're going to pick your poison. So
Right.
I'm excited to see what this offense looks like under Mike McDaniels.
Yeah, to go back to Q also, just to kind of discuss that, because he's obviously going to have a lot more opportunity than the players we're going to be talking about. Many of these guys are developmental players and depth players, and I think outside of Mesidor, we're probably not looking at a lot. Unless Jake Slaughter can win that starting left guard job. But drafted as a center, never played guard in college, might just be the center that's coming down the pike after Biotish, and that would be great. He was a lot of people's number one center. We'll get to that, but just to kind of speak to Q, because I do think that it is a very polarizing decision. At least that's what it's felt like on social media for me. That there's as much excitement about him picking it up as there is questions about why they would do it. And sort of one of the things that came up, because they lost him, right? They decided not to pick up the 5th-year option of Zion, and he ends up hitting free agency, and he ends up leaving and getting a pretty big money deal on the open market from the Cleveland Browns. I think there's a few things in there that I could point to that would say, why did they pick up Q's option and not Zion's? Well, number one, the league's got to do a better job of making the 5th-year option separate for centers, guards, and tackles. You can't just have one offensive line, 5th-year option number. It's just it makes it prohibitive when it comes to guards to be handing them $26 million. Same thing with linebackers, off the ball linebackers versus edge. The fact that if you get an off the ball linebacker, it's hard to put a 5th-year option on them when it's the same number as edge players,
Right,
and they consider
right.
it just it doesn't make sense because it doesn't match the market. So I think that's one with Zion, why that wasn't done. Two, and I'm not saying this because he's not on the team anymore, and people might say that I was, that I was as the kids say, capping for Zion, but he didn't necessarily get better. Like Zion, I don't feel like took dramatic steps year after year. Like, hey, is he better his second year after his first year? Is he better his third year after his second year? Is he better his fourth year after his third year? And I don't think the answer to that was a definitive yes. I think he still struggled with the same issues where he couldn't see it. He really struggled to pick up stunts. And I don't think he necessarily was a dramatically better player in year 4 than he was in year 1. Whereas when you look at Q, the jump from year 1 to year 2 was immense. The jump from year 2 to year 3 was solid. And he was able to build on a year 2 of 55, 711, and 8 with 51, 735, and 8. Jumped his average yards per reception from 11.3 to 12.9 to 14.4. And he's got a long of 66, a long of 60. He's got 32 and 27 first downs. The drops went down considerably, and just beyond the numbers, like if you just forget about the stats, being asked to do something that he wasn't really ever asked to do in college, and that's be an X and run those go routes and track the ball over your head and win with contact. He got exceptionally better at that. He couldn't do it his rookie year. He wouldn't even put 2 hands up. He just put a hand up, one single hand up. Wasn't comfortable fighting off contact. Still struggled with it, I felt like, quite a bit in his second year. And then last year we saw him become incredibly effective at that. And so I think that's the other part is this an ascending player? Is this a descending player? Or is this a player that has just plateaued? And in the case of Q, I don't think there's any question that he's an ascending player. And now you've got a play caller that you really believe in. You're like, okay, well, what if we pair him? And by the way, he put all those numbers together when his quarterback, and he was routinely asked to go on longer developing routes, and his quarterback is getting his head kicked in because he can't get protected. And yet he's still producing at that level. So I think that's the other thing that goes into this is why walk away from a guy that's gotten better every single year, has the physical traits and the athletic traits that you want in a player, and now has, potentially a real offensive line in front of his quarterback and a play caller to match. Let's just see what it is, man. And let's let's roll the dice on an $18 million, which is a wide receiver 20 to 25 level salary right now. Like, why not?
Right. What do you say money to those? Of course, now the draft has been adjusted. They went out, got old tackles, guards, tackles. They loaded up in this draft on offensive linemen. What do you say to those who say, hey, look, though, you had and you had, offensive guard, the need of the team.
Yeah.
You have did you have enough receivers compared to the offensive line? I think that's the part that I think some people look at and say, because I totally agree. Q got better, a tremendous amount better. You look at Zion, did he get better? He got stronger, not necessarily better, still missed certain things. I get it. But was the need greater? I think that's the part I think a lot of people sometimes look at and say, okay, Q's good. I get it. Yes, he got better, but we got McConaughey. We got other receivers, our offensive line, but now you went out and addressed that in this draft. So I think that you can say now safely, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, so I think it's also market based, right? Like Zion got $16 million, right? He was the top paid guard in free agency at I think 16.8, right? You had a number of players, whether it was Jenkins or Teller or Seumalo, those guys are getting between 10 and 12 million bucks. That's the free agent market. I'm looking at wide receiver right now. I got Alec Pierce that just got 28.5 million bucks. I got DJ Moore who's making 27.5 million, and they traded a second rounder to get him. Jamison Williams, $26.6 million, right? Devontae Adams, who's 33 years old, still a very good player, but he's 33 years old, is making 22 million bucks this year.
Wow.
Let me pull up Jacoby's numbers. So Jacoby Myers obviously was a huge get for the Jaguars when they traded for him at the deadline. He really took that offense to a different level. Here's Jacoby's numbers on the season. He just got 20. What's his total contract? Jacoby's contract is $60 million bucks, 30 million guaranteed, 20 million per season. Jacoby Myers had one catch for 12 yards in the playoff game they lost to the Bills. He had 835 yards and 3 touchdowns last season. That got $20 million on the open market. $20 million bucks.
That's crazy.
On the open market. And so I think that's what you have to look at as well. It's like, what's our money going to get us? So now as I'm going through average, I mentioned Jacoby is 20, Ridley 17.6. Wan'Dale Robinson got 17.5 as an unrestricted free agent from the Titans to leave the Giants. Romeo Doubs, $17 million bucks to hop on the Patriots. Rashid Shaheed, $17 million bucks to go back to the Seahawks. Cooper Kupp, $15 million. Like, it's a big number. And then when I go to guards, if for whatever, let's just say that that it doesn't work out with Slaughter and he's a center only and they have to dip back in to the guard market next year. Well, I mentioned Zion got 16.5. David Edwards signed 15.2. He might have been the number one guard on the market. He got 15.2 as the number one guy. Elijah Vera Tucker with those injury issues, but a former top 15 pick, $14 million.
Wow.
Elton Jenkins, $12 million. Seumalo, $10.5 million. Simpson, $10 million. Wyatt Teller, $8 million. Like, that's all right. You can dip into the free agent market and get a guard. You can't dip in and get a wide receiver.
No, you can't. Oh my goodness. When you're reading those numbers, I thought you were freaking pulling that. I'm like, are you serious? That is absolutely absurd. I mean, the market dictates what these receivers get. So you're talking about getting a receiver, Q at 18 million. I mean, dude, he's still in the middle. It fits. It works. He's not the highest paid. He's somewhere in the middle. So he's not the highest paid. Like if you're talking about Zion, it's a huge difference.
Yeah, and for people that are like, well, what about our cap space? I don't know, man. They had $90 million bucks in cap space, and they're still sitting on 40. So I'm fine. Pay the guy, man. Let's spend 18 million bucks. I'm good with it. So I understood it, and I think if you dig back into the past episodes, you're going to see that both of us were able to foresee a moment like this, that there would be sort of things that lined up where it made sense that they gave Q and picked up the 5th-year option on him, feeling like he's got potential to put up big numbers in a season. And then for people that are like, well, you could have got a comp pick. Okay, so you get your comp pick, and it's a third rounder. If he really has a monster season and someone decides to pay him 22, 25 million bucks, It's probably more likely a 4th-round comp pick would be my guess. And if he really goes off, then you're going to be pissed you let him walk.
Yeah.
If he ends up going for 1,410 touchdowns, you're like, why would you let this guy leave? He's a perfect fit in this offense. You've spent all this time investing in him. He finally shows up and blows up, and now you're going to let him walk. Like, to me, it didn't. The risk made sense. The $18 million risk. And that's what Joe Ortiz wants, right? It's what every general manager wants, extracting value from the deals you signed. Can I extract value from Rashawn Slater at $27.5 million, the highest paid left tackle in the league? Well, he's certainly hoping he can this year because he missed all of last year. Can I extract value from Akheem Mesidor at 22 over Keelan Rutledge? That you would have dropped into left guard. Like, that's all they're looking for. And that's why defensive end over guard in the first round made sense, because the highest paid defensive end is now making $50 million. Will Anderson is making $50 million per year. And so that's a big part of it as well.
Oh, it's a huge part of it. And that's what people have to understand. And yes, I understand what their thought process is. But if you look at what you've done, and you talk about pass rushers, elite pass rushers making $40-50 million a year as pass rushers, you got to go get that guy early. You got to go find those guys because you can't get them on the free market. It's going to kill your cap. So the Chargers knew what they did. Hey, you go in there, you get a guy 25 years old, pass rusher, you go backfield the offensive line, you go and take a flyer, you say, look, we're going to go get a center and say, this guy probably can play guard. He probably can play guard, move him over. And he's strong, big kid. You can do that. I've seen that happen. Hell, you saw Chris Dillman. Here's a guy played defense and went and started guard and became an all-pro. So I think that you can do that, especially when it's lineman, because it's about the strength and just having good feet as an offensive lineman. So I think the Chargers did get a lot of depth. They did get a lot of depth in offense, the guards position, the tackle position, and the center position.
Yeah, and I think, just to kind of move now off of Q into the draft. When they drafted Slaughter, I wasn't entirely sure. I was like, okay, he's never played guard. And just kind of shooting off some text right away to some people. They were like, yeah, I think he took a couple reps at guard, but not memorable at the Senior Bowl. But I feel like he did. And we had him, right after they draft a player, within the next hour or two, they make them available. The Chargers make them available on Zoom for us in the media. And so we have our media Zoom call. And he was incredibly impressive on that. Just very detail-oriented, thoughtful. So then I'm talking to, after they make that pick and then they trade out, they were pretty much knew they were done for the day. So a couple people were floating around, and I started chatting with them and just listening to how they talked about the young man. I was like, okay, well, clearly this is a dude that it was unanimous that they wanted him on their team, that he was not just center number one for them, but a guy that really blew their socks off in the interview process, in the football intelligence sort of category, athleticism for Mike McDaniel. Yes, they are projecting. And sort of this is what I said in the moment, and that was, worst case scenario for this is that he's a backup center. And if something happens to Biotish, you're ready to drop a guy who could start on day one and be a considerable upgrade over what Bozeman gave you last year. Like, Slaughter is that sort of, he's that far down the line of being able to plug and play. Let's go. I'm ready to start day one at center if you need to, because you didn't have a backup center. We talked about this, Lo. Like, they're going to end up having to draft a center, even though they signed Biotish, because Kaltenberger's not that guy. So I think in that case, getting Jake Slaughter, compete at left guard, see whether or not you can do it. If you can't, you're protected at that position that really caused your season to unravel in the postseason 2 years in a row.
Absolutely. And like you said, he can swing. He's a guy that's a swing. You can have him active. He can go play center. He can go play guard for you. He's big kid. He's strong. He's a good looking kid. And you think about a center, how quick he's got to hike the ball and then he get his hands up. He knows how to shoot his hands. Center position is tough. You saw trying to get a guard to adapt to center Zion,
Yeah.
just balls on the ground, balls out there. Now you got a guy that's already got his hand in the dirt and he's already got a quick snap with getting that center ball back and now shooting his hands. I think you're going to see a guy adjust at the guard position. Center, I think, is about one of the smartest guys on the field. He's got to make the calls. He's got to be able to move. He's got to be able to pull the double teams. He gets one-on-one. So now you're talking about a guy now not hiking the ball that can look at his opponent, understand what he's doing. I think you're going to have a guy, that can play center that definitely is going to move into this guard position, and I think he'll compete. I really do.
Yeah. I mean, he's got the size, right? He's 6'5", 303, which is, remember, Mike McDaniel likes his guys a little bit lighter. So 6'5", 303, 10-inch hands. So he's got them big mitts that he can put on you. 32.5-inch arms. So you're fine there, and nearly an 80-inch wingspan. But his athletic his RAS is off the charts. It was number 1. It was 99th percentile for centers. Now, I don't know what that would be for guards, but they certainly think he can do it. There's a reason why when Sean Merriman walked up and read that name on the card at the draft, he didn't say Jake Slaughter center, Florida. They had him say Jake Slaughter guard, Florida. So that's where he's going to start. He's going to compete with Trevor Penning, see whether or not he can beat him out, or if they can beat out Awaskia, and it's just going to be an open competition for left guard. And I think, I kept saying this because there's still a lot of people that are like, why don't you take Pregnon? He was sitting there. Why don't you take Jennings Dunker? Okay, well, Dunker's still a convert, right? He's being kicked inside from tackle to guard. So now he's got to learn the position as well. For all of you that thought that was going to be easy. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Didn't work for Trey Pipkins. Didn't work for Jamari Sawyer. Tried to kick him inside. Didn't play well at guard. So it's not like it's this easy thing.
No.
And that Dunker, pardon the pun, was a slam dunk that was going to work. Pregnon, at the start of this process, was listed as a first rounder by a lot of these media sites. The media scouts had Pregnon as, he's my 33rd guy. He's my 35th guy. And what happens? The guy lasts till damn near pick 100 because the teams didn't feel that way. The teams did their own evaluation, and he ended up lasting all the way until, I think, pick 88. So it's a lot of times you got to be cautious about getting caught up with sort of what all of the look, I pay attention to one guy, and it's not because he sits next to me in the booth and does the games with me, but DJ is the one guy out of all of them that worked as a scout, that worked in a front office, that worked evaluating players, sitting in a draft room, and legitimately, and Bucky as well. Our man Bucky worked in the front office as well. He was in the Panthers front office, he was in the Seahawks front office. Like, those guys were scouts. So when they do their stuff, no offense to others that I think are really good at what they do, the Todd McShays, Mel Kipers, Dane Bruglers, with no disrespect to them, I'm not going to put the same amount of weight into what they got going on as someone who was professionally trained by a team like Baltimore, to come up from the ground level under Ozzie Newsome in that system, and then go on to work for the Browns, and then to work for Howie Roseman. Give me DJ stuff. And I think DJ, you saw, was a little bit lower on Pregnon than a lot of other guys. And so for people that thought that pick was just going to be sprinted in when he was sitting there, and it wasn't, it was Slaughter, like, teams got their own stuff, man. They got their own way to evaluate players, and they got their own things that they're looking for. And for whatever reason, it just didn't line up, and it didn't line up for 32 other teams through 3 rounds, by the way.
Absolutely. So what does that tell you? And not just that, one thing we know about Coach Harbaugh and his type of team, you got to be a tough guy. You think about the kind of guys he wants. You look at Slaughter, he's tough. You go, if they want speed, but you think about what they like. You look at this roster, you got guys that are tough. Guys that are built to fight, guys that are not going to complain. They want a certain type of guy to make up on this team. So you look at Jake. I mean, he is that type of guy. Offensive line of Florida. He's a tough guy, smart, conscious, knows the game, smart guy. But he's also a guy. He's physical. He's going to get after you.
Yeah, and I think you said it, Lo. I had Chad Alexander, assistant GM, after day 2, and I asked him. I said, hey, for me and for everybody watching, when you say a guy is smart, I think people are, too many people often just mistake that for, it's a smart guy, Justin Herbert, academic Heisman kind of thing. Explain smart. And and you can do this, Lo, because you were football smart. There is a football intelligence where if you talk to Zion and you have a conversation with him off the field, incredibly intelligent person. But on the field, it's just there's something that's not clicking. It's not clicking fast enough. So football intelligence is read and react, process, remember, have a cataloged memory of I've seen this before and I can process in this quick 1 to 2.5 seconds exactly what this is, and I have that recall, and now I can fire and execute. Like that's what they're taught. Like Jake Slaughter has that in spades. That's what everybody said. Like this guy, we would queue up. He was telling me, I don't remember if it was Chad or if it was a scout that was telling me this, but they said we would queue up plays and ask him to take us through the play. And it was just the formation. And he would say, okay, so yeah, I know what we're doing here. It's like before we even hit play, like all he sees is the opponent, the formation, and he was already on it. He knew exactly what play we were going to. Like that's what this guy's recall was. And you can see that out there. You can see him picking up, passing off, the way it's there. I mean, there's some things that I'm not going to pretend like he's a perfect prospect. He's on the ground way too much. That's got to get cleaned up. Those balances, he's on the ground a lot. When we were watching it after the selection, we went through a couple games in the media room, and that was the bowl game. I think it was the Duke's Mayo Bowl. I think we got through the first 3 quarters, and we had counted. He was on the ground 4 times already. And we were like, dude, we got to clean this up. And then I think there's a lot of reaching. And so I think those are just the things that have to be cleaned up. But then there's also you could see the movement. You're like, oh, God, this guy's freaking athletic off the charts. Like no wonder McDaniel loves him. This guy can really move. So I think you take the positives. And, something DJ would always say that Ozzie taught him. Don't tell me what he can't do. Tell me what he can do. Let's talk about what he can do. And then we'll figure out if we can fix what he can't do. And so I think that's a big part of what ended the evaluation of Slaughter.
Oh, no question. And when you're saying, hey, guys, here's a guy that's a football smart. I mean, for instance, you get a guy and it's a gap. It's supposed to be a hard call because it's the closest. The linebacker walks up and it's hard. You want the guard to go down. He needs to block that. Sometimes you see guys in that situation. The guy backs up in the center. The guard's still going down. And now they brought the tackles guys slanting and the linebackers coming that side instead of him just like, boom, football smart. The game's too fast. The game slows down. The game's too fast. When you hear coach say, hey, the game is too fast for him. I mean, okay, this guy got stuck. He got stuck on thinking it's a hard call and the guy's already out of there. And here comes another guy and he's not able to come off. And that's what you saw sometimes with Zion because he wanted to just know his assignment. Okay, Mike Simon, okay, I got to block here and then I got to pop. No, you see that guy. Why are you even looking in there? Your head should go out there. That's when I talk about the game slowed down or the game's too fast, the football smart.
Yeah. And just to kind of go through, look, we're going to get deeper into these guys as they show up in a week or two and they get through rookie camp just to kind of run through them as we're getting a little long here. I think Travis Burke's going to hop on with us. Very excited about Travis, the tackle out of Memphis, who thought they made him bigger than Joe Alt. Well, Travis Burke's got him by about 1/8 of an inch in height. He's nearly 6'9", and he's nasty. There's some fun tape there, man, where you can watch him punishing dudes. I know you'll love that, Lo.
Absolutely.
You got that. We talked about Brennan Thompson and that 4.26 speed. The back end guards, I heard some really. I think Harkey is kind of a little bit more. I don't want to diminish what he was able to accomplish. I think that's a little bit more of a dart throw. Like, hey, there's some things we like here. When I was talking to someone about Logan Taylor, they believe that he's really got a shot. That the other guy they got in the 6th round in Boston College, that he's legitimately got a shot, and he's someone that played all 4 spots: right tackle, left tackle, right guard, left guard. I asked to see a tackle or a guard, and they said yes. So I think they really like that flexibility and the idea of what they went through last year with all of the depth issues. To have someone that's interchangeable at 4 spots is obviously something this team values. And then I think the big ones that I would recommend people go watch are the 4th and 5th rounders in Genesis Smith and Nick Barrett. People are really geeked on Genesis Smith at safety and dropping somebody else in that room that makes sure and ensures that Derwin can stay close to the line of scrimmage because you trust the guy who's got the eyes and the athleticism and the ability to track up top. He's got some tackling issues, but they can clean that up. I think they can clean that up. You know how good this team is with rally and tackle and how important that is. So I think they'll be able to clean that up, and they probably got a guy that should have gone around higher by the time that's cleaned up. And then low, I don't know how much Nick Barrett you've watched. I had not watched any. I didn't spend a lot of time on interior defensive linemen, but once he got drafted, we started pouring through his tape in the media room. And man, I was like this watching. The next thing you know, I'm like this. And the next thing you know, I'm like this.
Really?
I'm like, this is my guy. This is
really.
My guy. Yeah. He's got burst. He's got real get off now. He's got some get off, and
I'm gonna watch him. I'm gonna watch.
You're gonna watch some, watch some Nick Barrett. You're gonna love that. Because I think, and then when I pair him with Mike Elston, and we've seen what Elston's been able to do with Jamari Caldwell, with Tierre Tart, with Deshaun Hand, with Poona Ford, with all these dudes, knowing that and the only reason I can think of that he slipped is, he's older, like we talked about, right? He's not actually. He's 20. Well, he's 23. I'm like, oh yeah, he's not that old. He's 23 years old.
They're kids.
He's only a 1-year starter. So he was only a 1-year starter. And I think that pulled him down a little bit. Fewer than 1,000 career snaps. And it's funny, on Dane's The Beast, it says his weakness is often the last to spring out of his stance. Man, when I was watching, this dude had some get off now.
Really?
So I don't know if I was just paying attention to the highlights and ignoring the plays that weren't working. Underdeveloped pass rush instincts, 14 pressures over 51 games. So that's because he's not getting a lot of reps. Can be uprooted, stiffness in core and ankles. So for me, I'm just what I saw, and especially in that when you pull up this stuff, you pull up games. And so maybe I was just seeing a really good game, but he was going up against Texas A&M, against a guy in Chase Basantis that we were talking about them drafting in the first round, and he was having his way. He was getting some wins, some serious wins against Chase. So I was incredibly impressed.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch him play. It's a big guy. Want to see what Nick Barrett is. D tackle out of South Carolina. Watch him get off, especially when you're talking about the get off. Because I love guys that can get off and disrupt. Because if you can beat that, that guard getting off the ball and split that double team with that guard in center, you boom right now. You're talking about now. You're just going to get that pocket. The pocket presence is going to mess up the run, the timing. I want to see this guy get off, and you do. You got to continue to get better in the trenches. In the Chargers, we know that they did that in the draft. It was okay. Let's get their edge guy and let's go trenches. We'll get a receiver. We'll get a safety. But you win and lose games. We're always going to say this: championships are won and lost in the trenches.
Yeah, and that's why they drafted 4 offensive linemen and a defensive tackle and an edge. 6 of their 8 players were on the line, right? 4 O-linemen, 1 defensive tackle, 1 defensive end, and then you have sprinkle in a wide receiver and a safety. And we're feeling pretty good about it. Right now, looking at the FanDuel odds, plus 750 to win the AFC. That is tied with the Patriots. It is behind the Baltimore Ravens at plus 550, and the Bills are the favorite right now at plus 500. NFC, it is plus 380, the Rams, even though they drafted a quarterback at 13 instead of adding to what looks to be a Super Bowl-ready roster. They are the favorite just ahead of the Seahawks at plus 500. Super Bowl, Chargers come in at plus 1,500 right now behind the Ravens, Bills, Seahawks, and Rams. Division, they are currently tied with the Chiefs at plus 180 as the favorites. So there you go, our friends over at, let's see, awards. Let's see, what can we get? Justin Herbert right now for MVP. Josh Allen is the favorite, followed by Lamar, Drake May, Joe Burrow, at plus 1,000, and then Justin Herbert right behind Joe Burrow, tied with Patrick Mahomes at plus 1,100. So that's what we're looking at. I wonder if we have, let's see, do we have Amarian Hampton's plus 5,500 for Offensive Player of the Year, knowing how much Mike McDaniel likes to run it. That might be a little interesting flyer. Bijan Robinson's the favorite at plus 850. Gibbs right behind him at plus 1,000. So feel like rolling the long shot dice. Hampton's plus 5,500. Ladd is plus 10,000.
Wow.
I think Amarian at 5,500 would be an interesting one. And by the way, help use that. Don't forget, kids, when you're drafting your fantasy team, it's a good deal to kind of lean on the sharps and what they think the offensive player of the year is going to be when it comes to who you're selecting. So Bijan, Gibbs, Chase, Nakua, JSN, McCaffrey, Jefferson, Henry, Taylor, CeeDee Lamb, Cook, Barkley, all in that order. Don't be reaching for Saquon instead of grabbing Jackson Smith and Jigba or Justin Jefferson in there, thinking that it was a one-year wonder for JSN. So big thank you to our friends at FanDuel. They're a big reason why we can do it. And we'll be back next week. I think we're going to get Travis Burke, the
That's great.
rounder. That was their tackle, and we'll keep pushing forward with all these new players. Low excited about it.
How could you not be? These Chargers, they did a great job. It's going to be interesting. It looks great on paper. You know that you addressed the needs that you needed to fill those holes, so they did that. And now I can't wait to get out to practice and kind of watch these guys move around. I know it's not full pads, but watch them move around. You can see the athletic ability and see what these guys are going to do, because the Chargers need some help, and I think they got it.
And lastly, Lo, do we have a website where people can go for the golf tournament? Do we have that up yet?
You know what? I'm going to have the website up for you next week for the golf tournament. It's down there,
Next
but it's June 27th. It's going to be Dragonfly in Fresno, California. I'm excited. The Make Money is going to be doing it, jacking and hanging out with me, having a good time. It's going to be great.
Fun.
It is going to be a great time. Anthony Anderson's going to come help you out too. So
there we go.
You and him can be up there. You guys
help
tear
me
it up.
out. I've now been relieved of my duties. I'm excited.
No.
No.
Anthony, no. It doesn't work like that, money. We're salt and pepper, baby. It's me and you, baby.
I like this. This Anthony Anderson show. I can get drunk now. I'm all excited. It's all yours, Anthony. You're working. I'm having a good time. All right. We'll be back next week. We appreciate y'all. Both up, everybody.
Cheers.